And of course, guys, I cannot talk about Corvid19, what's going on with Guatemala, without talking about what the heck is happening in the US right now. What's happening in the US right now is one of the main reasons why I had, for my own mental health, for my own physical health, for my own spiritual health, I had to be out. Now, let me keep it real. I still very much feel that pain. It's real, guys. When I think and I look on Facebook, particularly amongst my non-white friends, and see their silence, and I still feel very much the both individual and collective black pain, black trauma, in regards to both institutional and individual racism in America. It breaks my heart. It truly does. It's one of the reasons why I continue to vote and will vote in each and every election. It's one of the reasons why I will still always stay connected and be a part of my activism past, because I do love America, but I hate the way America treats black people. I hate the black experience in America, but I love black people. I love black culture. I love our resilience. I love our hope. I love our perseverance. But for me, for where I am in this my life, where I am as a mother, as a black mother to a black child, I need it for her to grow up safe. I need it for her to grow up not being defined by the social restrictions that mainstream America would want to have her boxed into. But mainly, I wanted her to be safe. I wanted her to be healthy. I want her to be happy, and I want her to be free. And I want that for myself as well. And if I want that for myself, I got to do it. Hey guys, it's me, Jackie O, the OG original Black Digital Nomad and Globetrotting Mama, and I just wanted to give you guys a quick update of what it is like being in Guatemala during Corvid19. If this is your first time to my page, I am a Black mother who travels full-time with my toddler daughter Ruth, and we are currently in San Pedro, La Laguna, Guatemala. My whole page is devoted to inspiring and educating other Black women that this lifestyle is possible for you. You can move abroad, you can travel full time. It is absolutely doable. So stay tuned while I update you. I am going to be spilling tea on Corvid19, what it's like to be in Guatemala during Corvid19. I've done earlier videos, but things have changed. Now Guatemala has over 2,000 cases, active cases of Corvid19. So first and foremost, baby Ruth and I, we are safe. We're lucky, we are blessed, we are privileged in a country where upwards of 60% of the people live in poverty. We are not included in that bunch. We have enough to eat. We are able to safely shelter at home. And we are also lucky enough to be in a town that has absolutely no, I say zero, active Corvid cases. Now that is changing by the day. The town right next to us, like literally right up the road, does have 4 cases, which is terrifying to the indigenous populations that inhabit Guatemala. So if you know the history of colonialism and imperialism across the globe, you know that disease has eviscerated many indigenous populations around the globe. And we are determined to do our part to make sure that we do not participate in the spreading of COVID-19 throughout Guatemala at all. So we are obeying each and every government directive. Plus, like, who wants to get sick? I don't. Like, wear a mask, stay at home. It's not too difficult for people in places of privilege. Now, where it becomes more challenging is for folks who live hand to mouth. I feel very blessed that Guatemala was actually one of the first countries to go on lockdown. And again, it is because the president of Guatemala is a doctor, and Guatemala fully grasped and appreciated the fact that they did not have the infrastructure to be able to handle a massive outbreak. And to date, Guatemala has been in some ways able to control the spread of COVID-19, but it is spreading, and that is real. It is in the town next to us. The end of January is actually when the Guatemalan government officially banned any citizens from the Republic of China from entering Guatemala. So actually January 31st, Guatemala was already starting to begin the process of shutting down its borders. March 12th, Guatemala had already banned all European Union citizens, Iranian citizens, and also South Korean citizens. So the borders just continue to get more and more restricted. Actual reported case of COVID-19 in Guatemala was from a traveler from Italy, and that occurred on March. The second case of corona, confirmed case of corona in Guatemala, was on March 15th, and that was actually the first patient to die of corona as well. It was a traveler who was coming back to Guatemala from Madrid with his family. He was 85 years old, and his death prompted the Guatemalan government to completely close its borders, cancel Holy Week, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest holiday in Central America, and also shut down schools. No school for most kids or all kids in Guatemala. Some kids who are fortunate enough are able to take online school. But the problem with that is that the typical Guatemalan school year runs from January through October. Now, this is also a country with very, very high rates of child labor. So the fact that now kids aren't in school just means that the amount of kids who are absorbed or taken into child labor will only increase. And there's a high likelihood that a lot of the kids that are out of school now, particularly the most vulnerable populations, won't ever go back to school again. End of March, around like March 20-ish, the government of Guatemala was frantically trying to build a temporary hospital structure to handle all the potential COVID-19 cases. This was being built in the city of Guatemala City, which is the capital. Guatemala banned travel into Guatemala by U.S. citizens and Canadian citizens. Border officially. As we entered April in Guatemala, masks became required. No ifs, ands, or buts. If you are caught outside without a mask, there are very significant fines. Now, mind you, during all this time, from January to March, there are also tons of Guatemalan ministers who are ministers of health, minister of food security, who are resigning for either personal reasons or just because of sheer incompetence. In May, this temporary hospital that the government of Guatemala decided to build to try to treat COVID-19 patients got overwhelmed and began, effective May 11th, actually turning away patients. March 21st, we all, myself included, went into a nationwide curfew. From 4 p.m. to 4 a.m., everyone had to stay at home, be at home, not allowed on the streets. What the goal of this was to do was to try to curb the spread of COVID-19. Now, again, in the context of Guatemala, a complete closure is not necessarily that likely or ideal, again, because most people don't make enough money, can't afford to stockpile a week, 2 weeks worth of food. Which is why it will be particularly interesting if tonight, when the president gives his speech, if he makes a decision to shut down the country completely for 2 weeks. He'd have to do it in some sort of way where he phased into it so that there wasn't complete panic and protest. I'm not sure how much has been reported, but the U.S. continues to deport people from the U.S. to Guatemala and Haiti and other countries as well. Now, the problem with that is that many of the individuals that they are deporting have been Corvid-19 positive. Now, the problem with that is that many of the individuals that the U.S. is deporting are Corvid-19 positive. Now, what happens when you take a plane load of deportees from the U.S. and upwards of 40% are Corvid-19 positive, and you drop them off in a country that does not in any sort of way have the capacity to deal with active Corvid-19 cases in any sort of grand scale at all? It means that Corvid-19 spreads within the country a lot faster than it would have had the U.S. not taken the action to deport Corvid-19 positive Guatemalans back to their country right now. It truly is a humanitarian disaster. It truly is incomprehensible. It truly is despicable what the U.S. government right now is doing to Guatemala and other countries that do not have the capacity to absorb these individuals back into their country right now. And there is no urgency to get them out of the U.S. So it just truly, it is despicable. Corvid-19 is now in Solola, which is the equivalent of the municipality that I live in. There are additional restrictions. For instance, the city of San Pedro has basically kind of closed itself off. To get into the city now, which I actually live at the like the hill above the gate to the actual city, although I still consider myself a resident of San Pedro, or a temporary resident of San Pedro. What that means is there's actually a stop point, a checkpoint at the entrance of the city, the only entrance to the city, and they actually check your temperature. They check your ID. If you are not a resident of San Pedro, you can't come into the city. Tuk-tuks, which are the little vehicles that everybody uses, kind of the taxi equivalent that everyone uses to get from point A to point B, only tuk-tuks from San Pedro are allowed in the city, and those tuk-tuks aren't allowed to leave. So if you, or for instance, want to leave, when I leave San Pedro, technically leave San Pedro to come back to my house, which is up the hill, if I take a tuk-tuk, I take it to the edge of town, and then I either have to walk up the hill or I have to take a tuk-tuk from the next town, San Juan, even though it's not in I technically don't live in San Juan, to get me up that hill with my groceries. I have to take a second tuk-tuk. That's just the way it is. Every place you go, you have to sanitize your hands. To come into the village or to the town, you have to get your hands sanitized. If you are on a motorcycle or anything like that, if you're bringing produce into the town, everything is sprayed. To go into the market, there's a certain limit to the amount of people that are allowed in the market at each time, and everyone has to go through a box, a literal box that desanitizes both your clothes, your person, and your bag, and anything else that you may be carrying. So the town is actually doing an awful lot to try to curb the spread. And of course, everyone, and when I say everyone has a face mask on or some kind of face protective structure. Should I say structure? Because it's just something they try to build themselves to keep themselves and other people safe, which is always interesting when I see people in the U.S. refusing to wear a mask and making protest videos about wearing masks. Like, no one here is protesting masks, at least no one that I've seen. Now, people are protesting the loss of their economic livelihood. People are protesting the inability to move from point A to point B, but no one is protesting wearing a mask. People intuitively get why a mask is necessary to keep both themselves and others safe. There is no question about liberty or lack thereof that's going on in the U.S. And I see very, very angry people about doing something just as simple as wearing a mask. So any anger and resentment at the government of Guatemala from most Guatemalans comes from the fact that people are starving and people don't have any money. Now, there are supposed to be government programs to ensure that people get a certain stipend, a certain amount of money to live each month. Most of that is tied to individuals who normally earn their livelihood on the formal economy. So, like the blue collar workers, the people who actually get a check where government taxes are taken out each month, right? It is not for people, or is not accessible for people who in the past gained their income from the informal market, which is probably about 80% of the country. So there are a lot of people who are not able to tap into the government promised subsidies and stipends because they are a part of the informal economy. They are the fruit sellers, they are the vendors, they are the basket makers, they are the weavers. These are not folks that in the US equivalent would get some kind of have jobs where they're writing checks or they're accessing banks. So in Guatemala currently, there is a mandatory stay at home order on weekends. That means from 5 p.m. on Friday to 5 p.m. on Monday morning. So the whole weekend, Friday evening through very early Monday morning, everyone must stay at home. No leaving the house, no going to the beach, no going to the store. We are blessed to have a balcony, so that is still considered we are in our homes. But on the weekends, which was one of our favorite things to do, going to the beach, no, no bueno, can't do it. And you know what? I'm okay with it. If it keeps people safe, if it prevents the spread of Corvid-19, particularly in a place where there is no capacity to deal with an outbreak, then I'll do it for as long as it takes. Now, the problem is that Ruth and I already had a pre scheduled trip back to the US. Ruth typically spends a few months every year in the US hanging out with my mama. We were scheduled to fly next week. And guess what? The country may go into full lockdown, which means that not just Friday through Monday, but Monday until forever, or until there's an end date, the country may be in a mandatory stay at home order. Now, because the president of Guatemala is a physician and because he understands the socioeconomic realities of Guatemala, which is that 60% of the population lives in abject poverty, it means that he can't do this immediately. He would have to give people notice because most people are hand to mouth. What does hand to mouth mean? It means that most people only make enough money if they do to buy food for one day. Now imagine you're telling a population that they have to stay at home a minimum of 15 days, particularly a population of people who aren't working as it is because so many people, particularly where I live, are relying on tourism to support their livelihood. And guess what? There is zero tourism right now. Most of the hotels are empty. Most of the tourists, both domestic and international, are gone. The people here are either people who chose to stay here, who live here full time, or people like me who slow travel, who are okay with staying for as long as we need to stay. I've gotten messages from some of you guys. What can you do to help folks in Guatemala? And I am going to put a link up for my Spanish school, which is accepting donations each week. They go out and they deliver food and supplies to families in need in the San Pedro area, which is awesome and amazing. I myself donate, but I'm not going to put up pictures or anything like that of some of the other things I do, just because my page is not about poverty porn. I don't like exploiting people who are in need. I feel like if you're going to do some charitable work, just go do it. Press the donation button, make it happen. You don't have to make a big production out of the work that you do. I just don't believe in exploiting populations like that, people like that, human suffering like that. If you want to do good, do it. If you don't. It's just the way it is. But me, for the most part, I'm going to do my part. Once I leave Guatemala, if I do leave Guatemala, I still will continue to support the individuals who work for me, just because it is part of what I consider my responsibility as a person of privilege. Now, I will also say that I feel very lucky and blessed to be a part of the San Pedro community because there are an awful lot of community initiatives here in San Pedro to keep the most vulnerable parts of the population safe and secure, and hopefully to ensure that nobody, at least in San Pedro, goes hungry because of the loss of economic livelihood due to COVID-19. Again, this city depends an awful lot on tourism, both domestic tourism and international tourists. And with no tourists, both from other parts of Guatemala or from anywhere in the world, for the most part, being here, and with most non essential businesses being ordered to be closed, the city is dead and people aren't making money. In addition to that, children aren't allowed on the streets, and people over 60 aren't allowed on the streets to keep them safe and healthy. But that means that senior populations and children are particularly vulnerable. Now, unlike other cities in Guatemala, even before COVID-19, you wouldn't see street children or anything like that on the streets, or very rarely. Like, it's very rare to see a street child or a kid begging on the street in San Pedro. It just is not the norm. There are both cultural and societal safety nets that if someone were to see a kid on the street, they would be reported to social service agencies who would come and either take them and put them in an orphanage or foster care, or connected to a family member who could take care of them. The same with the senior population. It's very rare here in San Pedro, I'm not saying throughout Guatemala, but in San Pedro, to see an old person sleeping on the street, or to see an old person who looks in desperate need. There are a few cases, and most of those are connected with alcoholism, where the family has tried to do everything they could to get them off the street, and yet they make a choice that they don't want to go home and get clean. They want to stay on the street and drink. So most of the time when you do see a derelict person, it usually is as a result of alcoholism and drug addiction. So, about the same time that this video will be uploaded onto YouTube, I will be listening to the president of Guatemala give his Sunday night speech, and he will be announcing whether the country is going to restrict all movement for 15 days. Am I nervous about the insecurity of not knowing if we'll be leaving next week, if we won't be leaving next week? No, this is part of the process. I'm in a place that I truly enjoy. So if I'm here for another 2 to 3 weeks, if I'm here for another month, it is fine. I still make the same income wherever I am in the world. I still got my baby Ruth. I would love for her to spend some quality time with her grandmother. That for me is also important as we slow travel throughout the world, and that is why I usually carve out time throughout the year where those two can connect. I had a wonderful, wonderful relationship with my grandma, whose name was also Ruth, and I want to make sure that Ruth has that same sort of relationship and connection and bond with her grandma as well. And so I ensure that we do come back to the United States so that Ruth can spend that quality time with her Grammy.
Hey black girl, hey, you good? Cause I'm fabulous. I'm a digital nomad and my lifestyle allows my daughter and I to experience new places, culture, foods, and people. Living abroad and or traveling full-time is amazing. It is freedom. I can work from anywhere. I want more black women to experience the same sort of freedom. I help black women manifest their dreams of a life abroad or a full-time travel. Are you ready for a life beyond your wildest dreams?